Hello, everyone. It is Zaide here with another episode of DramaQuest. Today, as promised, we have a very special guest, which is Qwalla. She's with us today from Darkpaw Games. Hey, Qwalla, passing it over to you.
Hey, I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, I think it's really cool to have an opportunity to actually talk to the players and get my side of the story out.
Awesome. Well, hey, we're super excited. So, if it's okay with you, I'll just jump right into some of our questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, how long have you been working with Darkpaw Games?
So I started working here January 2021, so it's been 2.5 years now.
Okay, not a super long time.
No.
Have you had a lot of fun working on like different projects and stuff since you've been here?
Yeah, it's been awesome. I actually went to school for game design and it was tough getting into the industry, so being here is just an honor, honestly.
Okay, that's awesome. Did you play much EQ before you joined the team?
So I did try it in college. So I think that was probably around 2014. And I could not convince any of my friends to play it with me. We were
Yes.
really entrenched in, I think that was our League of Legends days. And so EQ was a really hard sell, totally different type of game. The graphics alone were enough to turn some friends away. But I have been a huge MMO player, so I'm not brand new to the genre or anything like that.
Okay, that's awesome. I find the same issues pop up for me when I try to get people in because I'll tell them stories and people get really hyped about it. And then their first day trying EverQuest, they're like, "Wow, these graphics are bad." and
Yep.
then the second thing they say is like, "What else do I do?" Because at the beginning, you're basically just turning on auto attack,
Right, right.
and
Um,
it's just tough sometimes to sell people on the beauty and depth that is there behind the first few levels.
yeah, and I totally get that. With my friends, let's see, we play a ton of Guild Wars. I used to
Mm.
play Terra online with a bunch of friends too. I personally play Elder Scrolls from time to time, and actually, old school RuneScape was the first online game I ever played. So my intro to the world of online games was an MMO.
That's awesome. So you have a lot of MMO experience there. Have you been
Tons.
playing like since you were a kid?
Basically, yeah. I think I was in, it must have been sixth grade when I started RuneScape, and I was playing games way, way back when, because I was an only child. So I got a Game Boy Color for Christmas one year, and that's all I did.
What was your first Game Boy Color game?
It was Pokemon Blue version.
Heck yeah. All right. Are you a big Pokemon fan?
I am, but secretly I haven't played the latest games. Please don't tell anybody, except everyone
Honestly,
who
like
listens to this.
I wasn't into just like the visuals of the latest games with like why are the Pokemon motorcycles? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a little weird to me, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So what was the first thing that you got to work on at Darkpaw?
Yeah, I really got thrown into the deep end pretty quickly. I did a few weeks of training with Pip, and then they just kind of started me on Terror of Lucklin. And the first zone I ever made was Basilica of Adumbration. I wish I could go back in time and redo it now that I know a lot more. And then I did the remake of Vexthal, and the first thing that I did on the live game that wasn't expansion related was actually making the corpse summoners and guild lobby summon for free and also making the merchants parcel merchants. So that was exciting. People liked that.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So I should back up a little bit. Can you tell us kind of like what your role is on the team?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a content designer, and I would say myself, Pip, and Ziri, we are all content designers. So we are doing the new zones in every new expansion. We do the pathing, the NPCs, the quests, and we typically have full ownership of the zone. So we make everything from the initial document. We're sketching out maps on actual paper or in MS Paint or whatever, and we see it through all the way to the end.
Okay, wow. And so is it like you will get one zone or the three of you together will tackle a zone?
We just get our own zones. We split them
Okay.
at the beginning of the year, and last year, we each got two. And this year, myself and Ziri were taking on three zones each. It's pretty exciting.
Do you have to circle back at the end and make sure that there's like a verisimilitude between the different zones since they're coming from different people?
Yeah, definitely. That's a huge thing is we really have to have those touch points to like make sure, hey, how are you getting from like your zone to my zone? Are there any opportunities to have NPCs that like will refer to another zone that makes the flow make more sense? So that's a huge thing. Yeah.
Okay. Were there any other big projects that you've worked on since you joined Darkpaw besides what you already talked about?
Yes. The biggest project that I had to do outside of that was making the level 100 heroic characters. I
Okay.
had absolutely no idea how much work that was going to take. I just remember one day, Engrith was like, hey, we have this initiative. Does anyone want to volunteer to be the design team lead? And I was like, why not? Because I really wanted to prove myself and show that I could take on these pretty big initiatives outside of just the normal expansion work. I had no idea what was in store for me. It was truly like 95% just myself and Miko doing the project, and there was no documentation about the process from whoever made the level 85 ones. So, one of the things, for example, is I had an instruction that said I needed to make 2 pre-made hotbars for every class so that players can jump right in. They know what spells, AA skills they need. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know what every class needs. I don't. So I asked our CRC for help, and they were flabbergasted at the idea that a level 100 character would only have 2 hotbars. And so they
Right.
eventually were like, no, 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 you have to have 4 per class. And thankfully, they were really helpful in telling me what actually needed to go on them. But oh my God, that was one of the most stressful things at this job. Like, I think I even cried, to tell you the truth, at some point. It was crazy. But outside of that, like, I have done anniversary events each year as well. I do a mission every year.
Oh, that sounds pretty fun.
It is fun. Yeah, I get to be really creative with those. And I think being able to design for an instance versus just open world is really different.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So like most retail content, and of course, I'm a progression server player, so I'm not hip
Hmm.
to like the newest stuff. But most retail content is instanced, right? In terms of top end.
Um, just like the raids and the missions.
Okay.
Hmm.
But so all the like lower level stuff, the group stuff, that is all still open world.
Yes.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
The heroic character stuff, it's really tough. Like I remember I made a heroic character back when they were 85s,
Yep.
and I had never played at that level before, and I got in and I was like, wow, I have no idea what all this stuff does. It was like so confusing.
Yeah, and that
Um
was a tough decision to make too, because there is an argument that making 4 hotbars for a character is way too much. Like, if someone has never played EQ and they decided to jump in and buy a level 100 heroic and they saw all that, I would understand if they were freaked out, to tell you the truth. But, you really have to make those tough decisions sometimes, and I totally see where the CRC was coming from, where, like, if a player that's level 100 doesn't have all of those things at their disposal already, they're just not gonna be playing the game to the level that they need to be.
yeah. It definitely makes sense. I think one of the big benefits of progression servers is that you get to naturally find your way to that point, so that you learn and you're not overwhelmed by like coming back or having like one big data dump.
Right?
Um, but I can see like on live, it's just like the heroic character. Even if you're already playing and you just want to have a new box or a new alt, it saves you so much time.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so can you tell us what kind of role you've had on the Oakwynd TLP server, the newest one?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming up with the TLPs is somewhat collaborative with the team. So the designers and the coders, we come together, and anyone is welcome to put together a pitch for the rule set and make their case to the team about like why their idea is the idea that deserves to be picked. And I guess mini tangent. Truth be told, whenever the team is told that there's going to be a big thing happening and you can put together a pitch if you want, I do it every single time. And I know that probably makes me sound like a narcissist because I think my ideas are just the best, but that's actually really not it at all. um, it was like really early on during my time here. I remember Jay Chan sent an email to the team about opinions for something, and she invited anyone to respond. And I had told Pip privately that I did have an opinion, but I'd only worked on the team for maybe a month, so I didn't feel like it was actually my place to say anything. And he was like, no, 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 don't feel like that. They hired you because they like what you bring to the table. And so the fact you're on this team is reason enough for you to be able to speak your mind. And that really stuck with me because it can be really intimidating to speak your mind when you're in a room with industry vets like Abzor or Engrev who've been on the team forever. Um, but tangent over, I did come with the pitch to do the evolving progression rule set as well as the legacy character bonus because I sensed from early on in my time here that kind of the $1,000,000 question, I think, is how do we keep players interested in TLPs long term? And the evolving rule set is kind of my experimental answer to that. I thought if every unlock had something new and something fresh, then maybe people would be more interested in sticking around, especially when they can see that at later expansions, the modifiers really start going bananas. Like at
Right.
Omens of War, we're doubling rare spawns. At Serpent Spine, I think it's double loot modifier. And if people actually decide to stick around for the long haul, they get to Night of Shadows. There's a 400% rare spawn modifier. So it's really just like I want people to have fun.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the nose there with that idea of like the challenge is how do we keep people going on the servers and I used to think that people would gravitate towards harder servers that took longer, like original EQ. But I think
Mm-hmm.
Mischief kind of opened my eyes and a lot of people's eyes that I mean, maybe it's just ease and accessibility is what retains the population.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of different philosophies for it, and I think Mischief was huge. I feel like it really opened the floodgates more or less for people to get really creative with their ideas.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, man. I mean, Mischief has just been has been an amazing server. I played on Oakwynd a little bit, but I haven't had time to really go deep on it. But right now in Classic, Oakwynd is very close to a vanilla server. You know what I mean? I look forward
Mm-hmm.
to playing it in like a year when the all the different rule changes kind of stack up and it becomes really kind of wacky and cool.
Yeah.
So you talked about kind of like that process at first for deciding on a new rule set
Right.
with Oakwynd behind us, how do you get from where you are right now to like the fresh idea for 2024?
Yeah, so we actually do the pitches that I talked about like months and months in advance because we do really want to not only see how well does that server that we just launched do, right? Because if it does really well, then there's things that we should probably consider for an upcoming fresh rule set. But we also want to weigh what impact that's going to have on both the design team and the code team. So if it's something that really changes something radically, let's say Mischief, for example, that takes a lot of bandwidth of the design team of Engret specifically. He has to work so much on those like loot buckets. So that's a huge thing we have to think about prior to even implementing the TLP. But then it's actually just a vote. We give our pitches, the team votes. It's very democratic, and then Jay Chan, of course, has the ultimate say on whatever we pick.
Okay, wow. So I guess you have to look and say like, do you guys ever get like really off the wall ideas and someone has to be like, hey, that's not really realistic for us to even implement?
Um, I wouldn't say anything is off the walls. Like something we consider every year because we hear it all the time is like all class, all race start. And like I get it. That would
Yes.
be so fun, right? But that is something where it doesn't maybe seem off the wall at first, but when you start weighing that impact, like I said, on the design team, for example, that would take a lot of extra effort, I think, to make viable.
Are you able to say kind of like how much time in a year you're able to put towards TLP design and upkeep versus new expansion design and upkeep?
It is so different just month to month, even week to week. It's so different, like what we get to work on. And I really wish if I like was a billionaire and I bought DPG, I really wish that I could hire someone who just did TLP stuff, who like just talked to all the players, figured out what kinks need to be worked out, and like really got a pulse check on how TLPs were doing. But as it stands, we don't have that. Most of our team is focused on getting out expansion content. And so when we do talk about TLP stuff and we make changes or fixes, it's because a player has usually reached out to us personally, or something has really blown up on the forums, or our CM team will bring it to our attention. But unfortunately, we don't have the bandwidth to be like actively seeking out um, things to do to help the TLP experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And I think we should probably say that if you're listening, that doesn't mean that you should DM all the design team with your ideas, please.
That is true. I should probably say, like, everything I say right now is my own opinion. It is not the opinion of Darkpaw Games. Please don't go message everyone right now with your TLP ideas. I will take the weight of that. I've brought this upon myself. Feel free to shoot me a message.
How do you feel about developing content for progression servers versus developing for live content? Do you prefer one over the other? Are there specific parts you really enjoy for each?
hmm That's a tough question. I think if I had to choose a preference, it would be live content because I do like having that full creative freedom. I really love writing quests. I like bringing things like factions back into our content. It had been a while since we did those, and I brought them back last year. So I really like that. And the thing about TLP content is that it's tricky. And I know people don't like to hear this, but I have not played EQ since 1999. I have not been in a serious guild, and I definitely have not played every class. So I 100% understand and admit that I have blind spots. And so I love making quality of life changes to TLP content when it's brought to my attention, either from a player from the forums or Discord or even Reddit. I'm lurking everywhere. But it can be tough sometimes to like advocate for those suggestions during meetings when it turns out I lack some context that a longtime player or a longtime dev knows that I don't. So that being
Yeah.
said, I feel really gratified when I see that a change I've made has good reception. Like I just added parcel merchants to Kunark and over there in Inferiona V, and I'm glad that some players are like super jazzed about that change. And so those easy wins make me feel really good. But like I said, it's kind of hard sometimes to know if what I'm doing is the right decision because I don't have the context of being a longtime player.
Yeah. Now, is something like adding those parcel vendors to Kunark, is that like an easy pitch, or is that like, people actually have some case against doing that?
I would say that's an easy pitch. I can't really think of a reason why someone would be against that other than just like maintaining everything about the classic area. Like they don't want any changes.
Right. Well, so, I mean, since we're talking about parcel vendors and everything, is it Abysmal Sea? The place where you go on the way
Guess
to Gates
what?
of Discord?
Guess what? We're putting a parcel merchant in there.
Oh my gosh! First heard.
You heard it here first, folks. I pitched it to the team because guess what? I did a bunch of trade skills there, and I completely 100% agree. We need some parcels there. So yes, I did get the okay for that.
That's awesome. I'm like, yeah, so happy to hear that. That's great. Would it ever be possible? Like, can you ever see a future where um, there is a separate client for TLP so that TLP specific changes can happen without impacting live servers, and you don't have to consider both things? You know what I mean? I think WoW Classic
Yeah.
is maybe like that.
Yeah, I totally know what you're saying. And I think that would be really cool. But just from my own personal perspective, I don't see that it's happening. I don't want to speak for the company. I don't know if there's something like secret cooking up behind the scenes, but I don't think so.
Okay. Let's see. So, do you have a lot of experience interacting with like the player bases on TLP and live? Do you see like a lot of differences in the sorts of players who gravitate towards one or the other?
Yeah, I have experience interacting with both, and I will say that I interact with the live players more than the TLP ones. It's really easy to build up relationships with live players because I hang out with them on beta all the time and I'll ask them for help when I need it. I like to watch them try out raids and like be on standby for reses. So I have a lot of relationships that I've built up that make the live players feel super comfortable reaching out to me for anything. But that being said, yes, I have also spoken to TLP players, and I do see differences between TLP and live. And TLP players, at least from my experience, are so serious. And I understand there's like a sense of urgency and a time crunch for people on TLPs. Like they want to get server first, or they just want to get everything done before the next unlock. And you have such a much smaller time frame to do that versus a live player who has an entire year before new content happens. And so, yeah, I just get the sense that TLP players, like, they're serious business. They know what they want, they know what they're here to do.
Yeah, yeah. Some TLP players definitely lose sight of the like it's a video game, and the people who work on it are humans who this is just their job. Yeah. If you had like infinite time and resources, what would your number one change be? Like your number one new feature or anything you'd like to bring both to TLP and live servers?
I love this question because I think about it a lot. I daydream about what I would do if I could. For our TLP players, I would love to redo Planes of Power flagging. I really respect whoever originally made them. I think that there is a cool story going on during the expansion, and I can see how it seems cool to have players like unlock new content and achieve it rather than just having it all straight away. And so pop flags are something that I became very passionate about last year after reading a comment somewhere from some guild leader who talked about like grown men in the guild crying because they messed up a flag somewhere and had to go back. And I've seen a lot of comments too about people who just stop playing as soon as pop comes around. So I started looking at the flowcharts and I started trying to do the flags myself. And I wish that I could get in there and make it simpler. I don't want to get rid of them. And I know this is unpopular. I also don't want to make them account wide, but I just wish I could cut out some of those superfluous steps that are easy to forget because it's crazy that you can forget to hail one person and it just throws you for a huge loop. But in
Right. It'd be like a
reality,
week-long setback.
right, exactly. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, in reality, so that's infinite time and resources, but I am kind of terrified of what altering any of that code would do. Like I feel like it's going to be some domino effect that breaks the entire expansion, but in
Right.
dream world, that's what I would fix.
Yes.
um Let's see, for live players, this one, I don't know. I feel like maybe people wouldn't get as excited about this as me, but I want to put more into Overseer. I think Overseer is a fun concept, and I think there's so much that we could do with it. And if I had endless resources, first of all, I would make it a phone app so that you don't have to sit down and log in just to do them. I think that
That's a really good idea.
it translates perfectly to a phone app if you ask me, but I understand we don't have the unlimited time and resources. But I think more reasonably, I really wish that I could just put it into the actual world. Like, I think it would be so awesome if you could do a quest for an NPC, and after you help them, like, you get them as a permanent agent or something. Like, if I have endless time and money, I'm just adding quests, I'm adding new types of rewards. I just think we have this system already that has so much potential, and I want to make it more. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting through expansions like I mean they're really old school now still, but like the Serpent Spine and Secrets of Fadeware, and it is really awesome going through these expansions and seeing how big they are and how much there is for like all the level ranges. It's really enjoyable, and even as a player who's already at the top end and I don't experience a lot of it because it's not beneficial to my character, just seeing that it's there makes the game world feel very alive as
Yeah.
compared to like Dragons of Norath or Prophecy of Ro. The game felt very like very linear. You know what I mean? You have like this one
Yeah.
thing that you're supposed to do, and it's kind of closed off.
Right.
So yeah, I love those big expansions, and like TSS especially felt like a love letter to classic when I played it.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you like that.
What do you want to tackle next in EQ?
Okay, well, I don't have unlimited resources, but if I were
Right.
to pick something realistically, I really want to get more involved in raids. And I did say that over and over again. And actually, this year, a few of us were getting cross trained into doing them. But unfortunately, just with time constraints and other projects, I know that I personally will not be able to see my raid from concept and initial work all the way to fruition, but I hope that Abzor will take what I had and like Frankenstein it together into something cool because I was really excited about it. But I've already talked about how I've played a lot of MMOs in my day, and I feel like I have a lot of big ideas about what would be cool as a raid in EQ. And I feel like I always have fun trying to push the boundaries of what EQ can do. And it is a 24-year-old game, so there's only so many new, fresh ideas we can bring into it. But I think raids are a big thing where I just want to innovate and like bring in some new mechanics.
I think that'd be really awesome. It's always good when you see fresh takes on it. And one thing that you always hear about, um, I think a lot of guilds like day to day maybe want easy raid content, but the stuff that you hear about for years and years and years is the raid content like Underfoot when it came out, or Myrtis. You know what I mean? That was kind
Yeah.
of legendary for its difficulty. And it's nice every couple expansions to get something like that, so that you can say like, look, we beat it before it was nerfed, or we beat it after the first patch, that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. There's definitely people who love a challenge. And I think, especially with raids, the people who are raiding want a challenge a lot of the time. It feels good to win.
Yeah. And you know what? Actually, it might be more viable for you guys to do content like that with the banner changes that you've made recently.
Yeah, it's true.
What was your inspiration behind the legacy character concept?
Okay. I I feel like this might be a little bit of a long answer because I've been a little worried about this question because I did read a lot of negative feedback about legacy characters. Some people are actively angry that it exists, and it kind of sucks because I felt like when I came up with this rule, it was something that would be a little bonus add on to the evolving rule set, and it was not received the way that I thought it would be. I kind of thought that there would be two types of players, and one would be happy about the rule, and one would not care about it at all because they aren't affected by it because they play all their characters on different accounts, so they wouldn't care. But it turns out that there is actually a third type of player who thinks that I am strangling the life out of EQ and I should lose my job because I'm so out of touch with like how players play the game. And that's totally fine. Everyone can have their opinion. I understand that legacy is not for everybody. But to be honest, I pitched the rule based on my own experience. I personally don't think I ever have I don't think I can box. I don't think I have the like mental prowess to do it, to be honest. So if I want to try a new class, all of my characters are going to be on the same account. And I personally just thought that an XP bonus would be nice because it means I can get those alt characters up in level faster. I can get a feel for them, quicker. And I know this kind of stinks, but I've seen comments about players main switching. And I know very rarely do people main switch because they want to, but I figured, with legacy characters, maybe that would take the sting off a little bit. And I kind of wanted to talk about there's this designer, Mark Rosewater, who's the head designer of Magic the Gathering. And I respect him so much as a designer. I think he just has a really good head on his shoulders. I feel like his design philosophies have always really spoken to me personally, especially as I was studying in school. And what he does is he uses this thing called player psychographics, where he came up with three different player profiles basically that you can attribute to players, and it explains at a basic level what they get out of playing the game. So like, are they really competitive and they want to win? Do they want to just play with friends and have fun? Stuff like that. And so he said that when you design components for your game, you need to be intentional and design that component for an intended audience. Because when you aim to please everyone with a single choice, you probably are going to please nobody. Because not all your players want the same thing out of your game. So when you design any one component or mechanic, whatever it is, you need to know which of those player psychographics it's intended for and then design that feature for that audience. And if other players don't like it, then that's okay because it's not for them. So when it comes to EQ players, I'm just going to be blunt and I'm going to say it. Sometimes the loudest people in the community speak as though they represent the entirety of the player base. But I can assure you that they don't. There are a lot of people who play a lot of different ways. So the legacy character bonus might not be for them. And that's okay. they do not have to play on Oakwynd, but I want to make an effort to design a variety of things that will speak to all the different types of EQ players. And so hopefully in the future, I will pitch something that really speaks to the players who feel uninspired by legacy characters. But as it stands, I feel like legacy characters were for the type of player that I am.
Well, you know what? I think your perspective on that is 100% correct. And I don't know why some people are upset that it's not catered to them. You know what I mean? Like there can be things that are designed, like you have spikes, right? And you have Timmies, and
Right?
sometimes you have to design for the Timmy. It's very obvious, and
Yes, you get it.
I think that the spike type players tend to be on the forums more, and they tend to be a little bit more hot tempered with their opinions and stuff. So you see them; they appear louder. But like you said, when I played on Eridune, I played without a guild, totally casually as a solo player, and it
Mm-hmm.
was the first time I had done it in like 10 years. And I saw so many other players doing the same thing as me, and they were like way behind the power curve. And I was like, wow, I usually race to the top and like am just in a hardcore guild. I never knew that all of this existed on the server, but there are so many players who are like that.
Yeah, there really are.
I think that the legacy character system is great. I mean, it's pure benefit. Like there is no downside to having it. If you want a box, do your thing. Who cares? But you could also duplicate your box group if you want. You know what I mean? And
Right.
the legacy character system is also like very. It's really touching on the zeitgeist because on Mischief, because of the no trade loot, people had already started doing that. Like we have mirror characters in our guild that we use to raid a second time or to do optional open server raids, and a lot of guilds do that. And you just make like I'm a warrior, so I have a second warrior the same level, and when I'm done playing with my main, I put the shared bank up. You know what I mean? And trade all my gear to my other warrior, and then I raid on him, and it's like double the amount of loot potential. It's great, and so I'm surprised that some people. I shouldn't say that. I'm not surprised because I played with EverQuest players for a long time, but it's disappointing to see that some people are vociferously opposed to it because it really is pure, and I mean pure positive, no negative at all.
That's what I thought too, but I will admit, it was the addition of heirloom has definitely hit some nerves with people, and I can see how there are unintended consequences with that. People are just they're just loot goblins. What can I say? Like people want loot, and with the heirloom rule, they want even more than usual. And so I can understand that yes, with guild drama and politics, maybe there is some unintended consequences there, but you are exactly right. I was hoping that this would be just a pure positive, no downside, but then people who don't get that positive, they're mad about it too because they
We
want a
don't.
bonus for them.
Yeah. They don't see that it's like not like legacy characters took away from them. It's just a thing that was added on.
Yes.
With the loot goblins thing. First, everyone everyone hates loot goblins. Everybody. Um, but it is really up to the guild leaders. You know what I mean? To decide what the philosophy of a guild is going to be on loot. And if your players are like that, you have to create a culture that discourages it, or you create a guild that adapts and feeds that need. It is totally not on the design team or the dev team in any way, in my opinion. Every time I lead a guild, we try to do like a team first mentality, and even on Mischief, where everything is a no trade, and it's exactly what you could do with Heirloom, like times 10. We don't have
Mhm.
that problem because we have cultivated that environment. And I think right now we're in the classic stage of Oakland where there's like 50 guilds that won't be here tomorrow kind of thing. And
Yeah.
people that lead those guilds just aren't willing to put that kind of work in. But the guilds that stay there long term will be the guilds that are willing to put that work in, and they will like that rule set. And I think that's what matters.
Well, thank you. That makes me feel better about it. Thank you.
So I do have another question about the legacy character system though. Would you
Mhm.
ever think about like modifying or building upon it even further? Like one of the things um, that I have always thought was kind of dumb about it, no offense,
Yep.
is like here's how it would appeal to me as a hardcore player, right? The EXP bonus I think is awesome. Now, I'm like, when I first started reading it, before I even finished the paragraph describing the EXP bonus and how it worked, I'm like, oh, great. So I'm going to level up 8 level 50s, and then I'm going to have an 80% bonus when I'm rushing to 60 in Kunark. And then I was like, oh, it doesn't work that way. I was like, so why would I ever do it? That's stupid.
Right.
Um, but it would be really cool. I'm sure you guys considered that, but that sort of thing, it's like the time where you want the EXP bonus the most, when it's most important, is when it goes away. And I know it
Right.
would be unbalanced. Like, I don't know how you would do it to do those to bridge that level gap. But even if it was like your first character or something, I don't know. Anyway, balls in your court.
Right. I absolutely would love to expand on it. I think you make a great point. That is when you want the XP bonus is when the next, expansion opens up and then suddenly it's gone. Um, and if the team felt like it was well received enough to give it another shot going forward, I would really like to try something like what you're suggesting because why not? Why not? It's just a plus, right?
Right.
But I do think there is a lot of new stuff going on in Oakwynd, of course, that it made a lot of sense to just start with the basics. It would take a little bit of, thought theory crafting to make sure that it wasn't crazy overpowered and thinking about how we could kind of balance it so that people, don't have 80% right off the bat because I'll admit that's a little bit crazy. Um, but, now that we have the framework for turning the legacy bonuses on or off on a server pretty easily, I personally think it's worth giving it another go. And I would definitely consider what you're saying.
Yeah, that would be awesome. As it is, it's still cool conceptually, and it's fun. And you know what? It's going to be really big when AAs come into the game.
Yeah.
So that's when we'll see like the real benefit of the legacy character EXP bonus. When you have like thousands of AA you have to get in a new expansion, it's going to be really nice.
Yeah, definitely.
So over time, we've seen a lot of the NPC models on TLP servers return to like their classic versions. I think back in the day we had like all the new models for goblins, orcs, spiralis, pumas, etc. Do you think we'll ever see the revamped zones like Freeport, Lava Storm, Prophecy of
Mhm.
Rose zones like the Rose reverted to their classic versions?
I think that would be super neat. Like I love the old NPC models, so knowing that those got reverted were like so cool to me. I love how they look. They're so derpy. But it does make me wonder if there's a specific reason that we don't do it with the zones. Maybe the Cedar devs know something that I'm out of the loop on, but um, I don't know. Like, is that something you want to see? Should I add it to my pitch next year for our TLP?
I'm I think it would be like the one of the biggest changes you could possibly make is to have classic Freeport in.
Yeah,
It is so passionately desired from. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but probably the majority of the TLP user base absolutely would prefer the older versions of the zones.
yeah,
Um, and I know there used to be a thing you could buy in the store, like one of the crates. If you got all the items from the crate, you got a bonus item that let you port into an instanced version of old Freeport, Eastern Freeport. It
yeah,
was like the Jade Tiger thing. So like
yeah.
there must be something buried in there, some way to do it, right? But
There must be. Okay, you've convinced me. I'll bring it up. I'll figure it out. I will include it in my pitch because you already know I pitch something every year.
okay. My gosh, if we have classic Freeport, I'm gonna have to re-roll again. Do you think there's any space for Darkpaw to get more involved with content creators in the community? And like if so, what do you think it would take to make that more common?
Yeah. We've seen a little bit of that, right? Like with our collaboration with players such as yourself during Extra Life, where we promoted some of the bigger streams. I posted your link in Discord actually when that was going on.
I saw, thank you.
You're welcome. You also see collaboration with the EverQuest show, which is hosted by I think his name is Fading. And Jay Chan was somewhat recently a guest on that, and other devs have been there before. And I just think there are really creative and passionate players out there. So I do want more of that collaboration. I would love to see that. And I think if we had a bigger community like management team, maybe there would be potential for that. And as it stands, this is my own opinion. As it stands, I think that our team doesn't have the bandwidth to be seeking out creators and asking them for collaboration, if that makes sense. But I do think if a creator feels really passionate and comes to us with a pitch, I can't make promises, but I do know that your idea will at least be heard.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know. Like, so if content creators are passionate about it, they should be more proactive about reaching out.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Because,
should
like
that
I said,
be
we can't be we're not all on Reddit and stuff looking for these people who are really passionate and doing these projects. So it'd be cool if someone brought it to us and we could see it.
do you think that players should go through Angeliana or whoever the current CM is at the time for that for best results?
Yeah, absolutely. And Jelliana does an awesome job. She is always bringing stuff to our attention. Um, Definitely go to her if you have something that you think is really cool.
Okay. Yeah, I'll encourage people to do that. I've had a little bit of success, like, with this and some of the stream stuff, but I've always been like, my policy has always been like, be the biggest nuisance I can be. And like the consequence is basically nothing. So just keep doing it until people tell me no.
Yeah.
So kind of touching on that, EQ's always been an MMO with intense competition for open world raids in the early eras and even like server or world first clears throughout the expansion lineup. Um, Historically in other big MMOs, server and world first kind of races are kind of like heavily advertised. They're like big events, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they produce massive viewership on things like YouTube and Twitch. And I think that viewership turns into increased player count, at least in the short term, as people are like, oh, I want to go play this game that I'm watching like these big guys play. Um, do you think there is anything that Darkpaw could do to encourage that? Or is there anything the community can do to encourage Darkpaw to get more involved in promoting, like, hey, there's a new expansion, come watch the race between like Team Cloud9 and Team Liquid or whatever, that kind of thing? Because for
Right.
other MMOs, that really is a real thing.
Yeah, it is. And I love the idea of making those races more of like an official thing because they are exciting. And I even like hearing the drama about it because it totally gets back to me. I hear all sorts of drama from guilds who like think they should have won, but their zone time was a little bit too long. Like stuff like that. I hear it all. Um, and I think that this is similar, unfortunately, to the last question where I think our biggest question at DPG would be what is it ideally that people are looking for? Because, like I said, our team's bandwidth limits how much we can sit around and kind of ideate about ways to get involved with the community. But when we're brought a pitch, I do think that gives it a way better chance at being heard. And so I think Twitch streams and stuff are awesome. I would be the first dev to jump on and like volunteer to help with that kind of thing because I think it is a really cool idea. But in order to make that happen, we have to see that players are already interested in doing it, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, like all I can say on that front is like I've usually only streamed classic launches, but I know when Mischief came out, I streamed that, and when we started doing the first raid mobs, like we did the server first Finnegal kill, which is not an impressive raid mob by any means. I had like 850 viewers on Twitch, which is outside of like the most I've ever seen on a Twitch thing for EQ. So I
Yeah,
can only
that's
imagine, you know
insane.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, by the way,
Interesting.
the team nerfed our method of killing him after that, so that was
Oh
fun.
no. So maybe you don't want this to be a thing because then we're going to see too much.
Well, I think that's good though. I like it. I think it's really cool when player strategies create changes in the gameplay. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
um, it's the player's job to come up with the best way to do things, no matter what, as long as it doesn't involve like cheating, like hacking, right? And
Right.
it's, in my opinion, the team's job to play a little bit of cat and mouse and find the things that are a little bit too exploity and fix them without there being like punishment there. You know what I mean? Like you should be like, okay,
Right.
they found a good one, we'll fix that, and then it's gone.
Yeah, and there's like a whole design philosophy about how restriction breeds creativity. That's what people say all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not that we want to restrict you that much, but I do think it's a fun challenge. Even when I'm playing a game, I've talked a lot about Magic the Gathering, right? I play a ton of that game. I do think that restriction helps you come up with creative creative solutions to problems. And I personally really like that. And I think it is cool for there to be that back and forth between the team and players.
Yeah, yeah, it is really fun, and I think even for us, it's fulfilling when you see a strategy that you used result in changes to the game because you're just having an impact on the game world. Like Mitigation of the Mighty is a perfect example, right? That
Yeah,
came out because of the way players were playing on Lockjaw and Ragefire, and it was really cool to see things evolve from there.
totally.
Recently on Mischief, we had the Secrets of Fadewar launch here, and we had some people who are upset that we found a way to skip a door, which made things slightly faster for our progression. I mean, we won the expansion race by 38 hours, so skipping the door wouldn't have mattered, but we did it because it let us take a nap and come back and wrap up some minor things afterwards. But yeah, so that was like a cool thing, and you're familiar with the banners, so there's like banner skips and stuff.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so we found a way to like navigate around some geometry to get behind a normally locked door, and then we're able to drop a banner there because banners ignore z-axis in the game. Like when they check to see if there's enough people next to you to drop a banner, they
Yeah,
seem to ignore z-axis. So we're able to just drop the banner because the door is like a trap door that lets you drop down. But yeah, it
interesting.
probably saved us like 2.5 hours on total clear time.
Yeah. That kind of stuff is cool. I can't say like too much, but I will say that I have been pitching this thing to Engrith that I am hoping to introduce with our upcoming expansion. And when I was talking to him about it, we were kind of talking about like the pros and cons and possible flaws in it. And he goes, like players are already doing this thing that's like kind of exploity, and what you're proposing would basically solidify that as a game mechanic. But they're
Mm,
already doing it, you know what I mean? And there's no way that we can stop players. So in my mind, and this I don't know if exploit is kind of like, it's the right word, but it's not like huge. This is not game breaking.
there's a big
Um
spectrum of exploitation.
yes, this is not like a game breaking, like going to crash the economy type of exploit. It's just like a thing. And I think it's almost kind of fun to acknowledge like we know that all the players do this, and we also know that there's not really a way to stop them from doing it. And so I'm kind of like confirming you. I'm validating you. I see you guys. Here's an easier way to do it now.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's good. It kind of reminds me of a thing that you do in leadership of any organization, which is like if you have a rule for something, you should have a way to enforce that rule, and if you can't enforce it, then the rule shouldn't exist, probably, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
So how much do you think you're influenced by the community? Like you see all the forum posts and Discord posts. I'm sure you get a ton of DMs. Does that
Mhm.
have a big impact on where you go, like week by week in terms of what you recommend?
Yeah, it has a huge impact on me. Um, this is probably going to be another long answer because I think about it a lot. And you're right, people do DM me all the time. I am looking at the forums, Discord, Reddit. I don't really even know why I look at the Reddit, to be honest. There's not usually a lot going on there, but I still look at it all anyway. Um, I lurk. And I think that there are a few things that I have kept in mind over my years of both schooling and now officially in the game dev industry. And some of the things that I have found important is one, you can't really fight against human nature. So you shouldn't change your players to match the game, but you should change your game to match the players. And I think that's kind of actually even a little bit about like what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
We can't change human behavior necessarily. We're creatures of habit, and we don't like change just like on an instinctual basis. And for a game like EQ, those player habits have been ingrained for the past 24 years. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind, especially at this stage in the game. We shouldn't be trying to change how players play the game. And so when I'm reading feedback and getting messages and stuff, that's something that I really take into consideration because I don't want to change the way that players have to change the game. So if they're coming to me with a suggestion about something that they have hated for the past 2 decades, I do really want to take that into consideration. um, The other thing too, I'm going to be brutally honest. This is going to make me sound like such an asshole for sure, but I'm just going to come out and say it. This is another thing Mark Rosewater said, but he said that your audience is good at recognizing problems, but not always good at solving them. And so he uses this metaphor of being at a doctor's appointment where the first thing a doctor asks is how you're feeling because you are the expert on you. Nobody else knows how you feel. But then the doctor doesn't say, like, okay, well, what do you want me to do about it? Like, what medicine do you want? What surgery do you want me to give you? And that's because the patient doesn't have all the knowledge that the doctor does. And so I fully understand and respect that players have a better understanding of how they feel about the game than I do. And they can easily tell sometimes when something is wrong or something is too easy or too hard. You guys have like a gut feeling. You have like this sixth sense that I don't have because I'm not playing the game this way that you are. So you're excellent at identifying problems, but I'm just going to be honest. Sometimes you're not as equipped to solve them. You don't know what restrictions the team is under, what, time and scope we have, the resources, the tech. So I do think that a huge portion of my job is to understand the perspective of players and to really take all this feedback from the community into consideration. I think they're a great resource to help figure out when something is wrong with the game. But I do take it with a grain of salt when they offer solutions because I think the solution is not always on point.
Are you suggesting that you do not have thousands of hours to solve my minor problems?
Unfortunately, no. But,
How dare you?
infinite time and resources, maybe things would be different.
Right. So going back to the psychographic profiles, right? How do you
Yeah.
when you're designing, and I know you keep those in mind now, how do you
Mhm.
define like your Spike, your Timmy, your Johnny, your hardcore, your casual? What is it that is quintessentially hardcore or casual in your mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. If I were to just separate like casual versus hardcore, I would say primarily for EQ, it's the amount of time dedicated to the game. A casual player is not playing on a schedule, and when they think about like what are they going to do in their free time, playing EQ is one thing on like a list of possibilities. They might decide instead of playing EQ, they're going to go watch a TV show. Like those two things are equal footing for them. And hardcore players, they're playing multiple nights a week, and that game isn't just one thing on a list of a dozen things that they might do. You know what I mean? Like they know that their schedule for the day is that they're going to wake up, they're going to work, they're going to go eat dinner, they're going to go raid with their guild in EQ. Then after that, maybe they'll watch a TV show and, brush their teeth and go to bed. But the EQ part isn't a question for them. It is on their schedule. It is locked and loaded. The only question they have is what day and what time. So, that I would say is probably the difference in my mind.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. The thing I think about like from that description is just how broad the spectrum of hardcore is, right? Like you've got
Yeah,
guilds. My guild right now, the top guild on Mischief, but we're actually pretty casual. We only raid twice a week, and it tends to be like 2.5 hours. But like we're definitely on a schedule.
right,
However, I've been, in the earlier eras when open world content and other things demand more time, you might have like 30 hours of raiding in a week,
right.
and it can be totally crazy. So yeah, it's interesting to hear your perspective. I think it's a good one.
Thank you.
Okay, so kind of a few a change of topic here, a few easy questions. If you had to form a 6-player group made of only Darkpaw staff on the next TLP server, and you had to level from 1 to 50 with them, who would you
Ugh.
invite and what classes would you want them to play?
Oh my god. Let me start by saying I don't know if this team would be very successful, but if I just like got to pick like, a schoolyard kickball game, this is who I would pick. I would pick Absor number 1. He's just like so much fun to talk to. I tell him all the time that like he's my role model, he's my mentor, and every time I do, he gets super frustrated because he wants this reputation that he's like a grumpy old man. So I love him, and he would play a bard for sure. I don't know why he's obsessed with them. It's the same way that I'm just nonsensically obsessed with paladins. He loves bards. Second, Aristo. Aristo would definitely be a wizard. He works on spells, so that makes sense. But I just get very wizardy vibes from him, and he's also a lot of fun to talk to. So I think that would make for a good conversation on that half of the team. Um, I would play with Miko because he knows what he's doing, but I honestly forget what class he primarily plays. I think I think that he's a druid. I don't know, but his Discord pick for a while was that raccoon from Pocahontas, so I feel like I'm just getting druid vibes. Um, and then let's see, two more. Ziri, she is really great, a lot of fun to talk to. She loves Vashir, so I'm pretty sure she gives me Beast Lord vibes. And then Pip, I need him there for the comedic relief. Pip is really funny, and he's just a really like fun dude to hang out with and talk to. I know during our team play sessions, he plays a rogue, so I can't really see him as anything else. So he is a rogue. Of course, I would play paladin.
So that is your six person group: a bard, a wizard, druid, beast lord, rogue, and paladin. It
Yes.
might be the hardest 1 through 50 launch group you could make, short of like stacking rogues. Yeah, it'd
Amazing.
be very challenging.
I just want to pick what people like, what they speak to me as, and that's the read I get on everybody. I could be totally off base, but that's how it is.
That's good. I mean, that's the spirit of EQ. That's really cute. It's funny you mentioned Absol being like the grumpy guy, or he wants to be like that, because I just sent you a picture that we made of Absol. I think this was like 5 or 6 years ago now. It was like 5 days before the Agnar server launched. They changed the density of monsters in the starter zones. And so we made this picture of like this crowd of protesters being crushed under a boot, and we labeled the protesters starter zone mobs and the boot Abzor. We're like, this is what Daybreak does 5 days before launch. And yeah, we posted that around. I think I got a forum account suspended for posting that, but
Oh my god.
as it should be. I think, and they ended up reversing it too, because it was
Oh.
received poorly. So that was good.
Yeah, no, it's nice to hear when like feedback is actually taken into consideration.
Yeah. What is your favorite zone?
My personal favorite zone is Bixie Warfront. I just love the characters, the aesthetic. I thought Heroic Adventures were pretty fun personally. I don't know how other people feel about them, but I think that whole zone felt very unique. And I just really like that expansion in general. So Bixie Warfront for sure.
What is your favorite raid? I know you don't raid a lot, but
I do have a favorite. My favorite is the Performer from, I think it's from Depths of Dark Hollow.
yeah, Demiplane. Oh, I love Performer. It's good.
Really?
It helps you weed out some players who don't know how to use Gina yet.
I think it's a lot of fun. I think that Zarn made it. If he didn't, and someone hears it who did make it, I apologize. Doubt it, but I apologize. But he was the one who actually walked the team through it. We did it during one of our team play sessions, and I think that the concept is just really fun and unique. And I feel like you can tell that when a raid has unique mechanics, the way that, players have to sing along in the performer, you can tell that the dev behind it was probably having fun and probably feeling passionate about their work. Because I know from experience that when you're making something fresh and new, it's going to require a lot more effort and brain power versus like rehashing the same mechanics over and over. So kudos to all the devs over the years who like really put that effort into their work, because I feel like it shines through and it's felt by the people playing them. And I think the performer is just a really cool example of that.
You know, it's funny that you picked that one, because I think Demiplane is one of the best raid zones in all of EverQuest. And
Really?
Performer is the best fight in the zone outside of Mayong himself, I think. Performer is just so cool, it's so unique. I can't imagine having done it live and trying to figure out like, what are we doing here? Why do we keep losing, you know?
I know, that would have been crazy.
But you could tell that there was passion and inspiration there, and it's really, really great. I love Demiplane, I love Performer.
I'm so glad to hear that. I picked right.
How do you define Not just you, but I guess, yeah, just you. I'll only ask you to speak for yourself here. How
Yeah.
do you define success for a new server? Is it like player count at launch, player retention over months and years?
Yeah. I think both of those things are really important, but I would say that retention is probably the bigger factor because we could have these are just pretend numbers before anyone like decides that they want to make a YouTube video analyzing these numbers.
Oh,
Let's say we have 10,000 players like log into our next TLP launch, but then 2 weeks later we're down to like 2,000 daily logins. Even though there was a ton of initial traction and excitement, obviously the rule set must have been a huge flop for people to quit that quickly. But if we have a server on the other hand who says, let's say they have 5,000 players on day one, but then that number holds steady over the next few months, over the next year, even 2 years later, then we know something went right because the people who gave that server a shot are clearly enjoying something about it to stick around for that long. So I would say retention is probably the biggest thing.
so then by that metric, Mischief is probably considered like one of, if not the most successful progression servers ever.
I think so, to tell you the truth. I don't know if that's like the wrong answer, but I mean, I see people over and over say they want Mischief 2.0. I know that players are active there. So I think clearly that is a rule set that we got right. Like, no one is asking for Core Nav 2.0. No offense to the people who play there. I just feel like Mischief struck this perfect balance between like bringing a fresh experience to players while not changing the core gameplay. Like I said earlier about like you can't change how players play the game. So EQ is still EQ. You're still doing the same things you know you love, but now your loot is random.
Yeah, and one of the biggest indicator for me on Mischief, beyond just seeing the piles of people so deep in the expansion lineup, is that like as we push towards year three, we still have the AFK auto kick. Like it's crazy.
I know, but I've been told that it is still necessary.
Yeah, I mean that's it's like good and bad. Like I would love to sit around the guild lobby flexing my server first titles and stuff, but it's so positive that the server still needs it. And it speaks so much to like the health because a lot of servers lose it by like pop or even earlier sometimes. So
Yes.
it's crazy to think that mischief population is comparable to like most other TLPs in pop.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And that's also one of the reasons why if I had endless resources, I would redo pop flags because I'm convinced if they were a little bit more straightforward, then people might not quit.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed over the last couple iterations of TLPs, the team has been condensing some of the expansions a little bit, and I think that's
Yeah,
huge. Pop got its condensed version. I don't think Pop is actually condensed, but like LOY is no longer part of a timer, and Eldon is only 1 month, which is huge
right,
because it basically you had like 6 months of pure planes of power back then.
right.
And something on Oakwynd is different with Dragons of Norath and Omens, right? They launched together.
Yep, yeah.
That is another that was definitely another pain point. So that'll be great. So that is going to be probably a 3 month total time for DON and Omens. I'm thinking, right?
Something like that, yeah. I for Oakwind, I know that there was a lot of controversy before it launched, of course, but I think that really fueled us to want to hear what other feedback players have and try to like give players something. And so that was like one of those concessions. So was making all the uh, items heirloom and stuff like
Yeah.
that was just us trying to like give a little something to players.
Well, I think it's awesome. For first, heirloom, the legacy character system basically wouldn't work without heirloom. I think it's like a key part
Right.
of it. So I'm glad
Yeah.
that's there. But yeah, that level 70 expansion stretch is like a whole year of barely any new AAs and no new levels. It is absolutely brutal on TLP servers. I've done it like 3 times.
Yeah.
And usually it kills off like half the population. So anything that condenses that a little bit is really good. And now I'm super excited to see what the meta is going to be because if you're a top guild leader, when it launches, do you rush DON progression or do you rush omens? Do you have a big enough force to try to rush both at the same time? What is the final target? Who's the end boss that counts? You know what I mean? Who wins?
Right.
So I'm
Yeah.
excited. I mean, I
That's
think
great.
Vishimtar is easier to access, but is a lot harder to kill than OMM. So
That's great. I love to hear that people are excited about that.
all those things that change the meta, I think, get people pretty excited. Thinking like now, if I was there, like, could we kill Vishimtara at 65? Could we do it without leveling? Maybe we could because the BON progression can be done in like 2 or 3 hours if you're fast.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a pretty exciting thought. The same thing, like whenever the zone experience modifiers get changed for progression servers, it's very exciting because you get to map them out again. You get to find new routes, and you don't have to just like do the same stale route that you've done for a couple of years.
Right, right. And that is something that I've brought up to the team. So no promises, but the idea was floated out there.
When you guys are when you're planning to release new TLPs, do you ever consider like the impact it will have re the attrition on the other servers? Because I think a big part of the TLP player base is like the same group across all the servers. And so, like, if you launched a Mischief 2.0 next year, for instance, I think it would be tremendously successful. I think it would have a really big impact on the attrition of Mischief 1.0, though. You know what I mean? Is that a factor that you consider?
I totally know what you mean. And it is definitely something we think of, like to your earlier question about thinking about the success of a server. That is something that we have to take into consideration because if we're looking for player retention over a certain amount of time, we have to keep in mind that, after a year, there might be a huge drop off in a server, but not necessarily because it was a bad one, but because people are more excited about something that's brand spanking new and like shiny and cool. But that being said, anyone who is like looking at that data and thinking about it, that is not me. That is not my job.
Right.
But it definitely is like talked about. It is thought about. We do keep it in mind.
That's good. That's really good to hear. Yeah, I think, TLPs used to be separated by like 3 or 5 years, and it gave them more breathing room. And now that
Mm-hmm.
they're an every year thing, which by the way, I think everyone really appreciates that because it is nice to have like a fresh, almost like seasonal kind of server thing.
Right.
But it definitely is like a snake eating its own tail to some extent. You see the same people. It gives rise to guilds like Faceless, right, where you're on server after server after server because it's just so easy to stay together.
Right. Yeah.
All right, well, Qwalla, I think this is about everything I wanted to ask. Is there anything that you would like to say?
Gosh, well, it was really nice talking to you, first of all. Maybe, hopefully, in the future, I can come back and regale you with more tales, something interesting. But I guess I don't really have too much else to say. I will say, if players, you guys have feedback or questions or ideas or something, you can always come to me. I will totally read every DM, I promise. Um, so, yeah, please feel free to reach out if you have something. I'm always really excited to bring stuff up to the team. I'm like that annoying person during meetings who's like, hey, I have 3 things this week that I need to rattle off to you guys.
Rip to your inbox after that.
It's okay. It's okay.
Well, this has been really awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. The conversation was great, and I would be happy to have you back on anytime in the future. Hopefully, maybe around like the next TLP server launch or maybe the next retail expansion launch, I can find some. You can find some time to come back on and do another interview. That'd be great.
Totally. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Awesome. All right, folks. Well, that is it. Thank you very much, Qwalla, and this is DramaQuest out.